Ladies and gentlemen, it is Sugi RTS here, coming back after a pretty long hiatus, but today we are going to be talking about Endless Legend 2, and this review will be based on the current version of the demo, and the game itself will be launching on September 22nd, which likely will be form of an early access launch, as it seems that they got a lot of constant updates which will be rolled out in the upcoming weeks, months, and years, and I'm sure that there's plenty of DLC also planned out, as that was kind of the monetization model with the first game, and also with Endless Space. So everything that you're going to be seeing here today is pretty much close to the final product, but there's likely going to be some type of tweaks and adjustments before the release, and I didn't really witness any types of bugs, so it's likely going to be a very similar experience. However, in the demo, you're not actually able to do the full playthroughs. You're not getting the full experience, you're getting a bit of a tease of it. Now, before we get started with the review, if you are interested in supporting my channel, there are currently a lot of ongoing RTS, 4X, and strategy games sale on at Instant Gaming. So every purchase that you're going to be making throughout my link will greatly help me out. So help your brother out and buy some games. But let's kind of get started with the actual review. So Endless Legend 2 is a turn-based 4X fantasy game with currently 2 playable factions. While the third one is currently in the game, it is not playable. You can put it as like an NPC or AI, whatever you want to call it, in the game, but you're not able to play it with yourself. And I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of plans to eventually expand and add more factions into the game, either via DLC or regular updates. And I'm sure that third faction is also going to be added on the release of the game. That's my assumption. I don't actually know that. Now, I haven't played the original Endless Legend game, so my frame of reference really here is Age of Wonders 4, which is a quite similar 4X style of a game contrasted to Endless Legend 2. So you basically jump into this randomly generated map, unless you're going to be starting off with the tutorial, and you are going to be basically starting out with a couple of units, and then you get to basically farm out your base in the beginning of the game, if you choose to, which you obviously should. And then you're going to be basically expanding slowly as you progress throughout the game. In the wilderness, you're able to find different types of monsters, treasures, and neutral factions. There's a lot of different types of interactions that you can do. You can also find different types of quests, which, you know, vary from different things like, hey, obtain these types of items from me, or basically kill these monster camps over here, or find the missing tribesmen or something like that. So there's a bit of a variation between these quests, and sometimes you're even able to choose different types of outcomes, like you can resolve the situation peacefully, or you can basically engage into a battle. There's, of course, different types of resources in the game, so there's resource management. It's not obviously on the same level as like an RTS game. It's pretty easy to understand. There's a couple of them. Most of them are kind of there to boost your productions in the base, whatever it's recruiting and building things, or also like unlocking more terrain and expanding your territory. And then there are items that basically give you temporary buffs, or you can basically sell them in the market for the equivalent currency of gold in the game. So I think there's a lot of interesting elements in the game in terms of like building paths, and there's obviously like a research tree where you're able to unlock different types of buffs and, you know, units and buildings and all types of things. And the factions are quite distinctive from each other. Like, while the core gameplay elements are the same between the factions, there are certain things that make their play style slightly different. So obviously there's the visual difference between the 3 current factions, that they're very different looking. So that's what I really like about this game, that they do honestly look different, and they do have mechanisms that make them feel apart. Not like super significantly. Usually there's a couple of different mechanics, and maybe there's some balance things, whereas some units are able to regen in these different areas. So the one faction is able to like put out these corals, and the corals basically expand on themselves, and that allows you to expand your territory. And the other faction doesn't have any types of corals. I don't know what the insectoid faction basically has, as we're not able to play as them, but they also seem to have a lot of mechanics which are a bit different from the rest. And as you can also progress throughout the game, there's going to be a lot of these cool cinematics, like, you know, artwork, which are basically animated, and there's usually like narration going on. So each of the factions kind of have their own lore, and the world itself has a lore. There's different types of races in the world, and you know, it's kind of interesting. And in terms of like what I like about the game is that it doesn't look like another fantasy IP. I think it's distinctive. The monsters, everything basically looks very unique outside from the humans, obviously. But I think there's a very good thought put into the designs and how everything basically looks. And when it comes to the combat, I really like it, because in Age of Wonders 4, I hate the combat. I always auto-resolve it. In Total War 3, I usually also like auto-resolve there, but with that game, like, the combat lasts too long, so I don't want to play every match. But in here, the combat is actually pretty fast. So once you go into the, you know, match, I think it's like maybe 4 turns or something like that usually when the battle is going to be ending, depending on how many enemies and, you know, units there on the field. And obviously there's some limitations on that, how many there can be, which is gradually something you unlock as you progress throughout that tech tree. You get to have more units on your unit, and obviously the units that are kind of close by can also enter the battle. So there's a lot of cool these types of things. Obviously there's hero units as well, and I think you can unlock 4 of them in total, but in the demo you can't really get further than 2, at least based on my experience. So I think the combat is really cool. It's fluid. It's not super complex, and there's different unit types. There's obviously heroes, there's archers, there's tanks, there's damage dealers, magicians, stuff like that. So it's very, very cool in my opinion. Another element which seems to be new that didn't exist in the first game is the moonstone effect. So the terrain goes through these like aquatic cycles, and like real terrain resurfaces, I guess the word is, from the water. So basically every now and then the monsoon is going to happen, and you're going to be getting access to these new areas near the water, which are now, you know, above the water, and you're going to be getting like new dungeons, new monsters, and obviously new items that you can pick up on the map. So it's basically expanding map on that sense, and that's a very cool element, what I really like about the game. And it just kind of makes it feel like a bit more dynamic in the sense that there's changes that are already going on, and it's going to be impacting your gameplay and also the borders and everything like that. So I really like that, and that was a really, really neat element that they basically added in. When it comes to graphics and optimizations, I think the game runs really well without no frame drops. Loading screens are brief, and the visual designs of the characters that I kind of already mentioned are distinct and cool. And I wish there were maybe more multiple portraits given to each factions, as if you're going to be jumping in the game and you're going to be choosing the biggest map and going to have 8 factions. The factions are going to be sharing the same names and basically the same portrait as the character, the faction leader, whatever it's called, is the same. And that's kind of lame, I'm not gonna lie. And they have to maybe add like visual the character can be exactly same lore wise, but I wish that they would have like AI generated name, and then we would have like a bit of a different look or variation of that look, so it would be different. But there are actually multitude of different heroes in the game, so there's a variation at least there. So that's something that kind of needs to be a bit updated going onwards, because it's kind of dumb that there's like 5 factions in the map and they all have the same name, they just have a different color, and that should be enough. Well, it's not. Now, this is of course like a beta of the game, so or demo, whatever you want to call it. So there are things that aren't great at the moment, and the biggest thing that really annoyed me was that every map that you're going to be drafting out from the advanced settings and everything like that is going to be forced to play a score as a victory condition. So the one that has the most amount of score at turn 90 or something is going to be winning the game. Even if you toggle score off on the options, it's always going to be applied in. So you're not really able to get into the last stage of the monsoon, and you're not really able to ever play an 8-player faction map to the end, because there will be no time to actually fully experience the game. So all of my games basically ended up on the score thing. It's very lame, but it's very nice that in the final version of the game there will be those options to basically have different types of victory conditions, just like in Age of Wonders, and that is very much needed and very much appreciated. So that's something that I like, but it's really hard to give you a good detailed rundown about like the balance in the late game, as you're never really able to get there fast enough. And another thing that I probably didn't like was that, contrasted to, I guess, Age of Wonders 4, is that the early game feels very slow, so you're gonna be just, you know, ending your turn almost multiple times. As when you get in your base started out, building units and the first buildings takes a long time. So a lot of turns there's resource, and that determines how many turns there are gonna be to basically get that unit or building. And that feels very slow in the beginning of the game, and I wish that was a bit more fast-paced in the beginning. Maybe add some type of early bonus, and then on turn 20 or whatever, that bonus is gone. So that would make the early game be less about like wandering off into the jungle and finding items. And it's like if you die in a first encounter with the enemy or a creep in the game, you have a pretty long wait to actually get like a full set of 5 first units. So that was not something I actually very much liked. So you have to be really careful with your early game decisions with your army, because it takes a long time to get refills on that. As for the music, I thought it was pretty decent, but I wish each faction would have their own theme song. I think that's quite normal to most 4X and RTS games out there, as the current music that plays in has a bit of like Expedition 33 vibes, actually, some same instruments, and that type of music really fits into the aspects, which is the aquatic faction that you get to play as, but it doesn't really fit into the Kin of Sheridan, which are kind of like the humans here. So the music, I guess, needs to be faction based in my opinion, and maybe there's gonna be tracks that are gonna be playing which are going to be neutral to everybody. So there's going to be the main theme song for each faction, and then there's going to be other tracks which are going to be normal to everybody. So that's one of the things I would like to see. Not to say the music was bad or anything, I just didn't think it fit all the factions. And my overall thoughts is that I'm pretty excited for this game. I see a lot of potential. The beta isn't actually even like very super beta bare bones either. Like there's a lot of content already here. And obviously we want to see the necrophage to be actually playable, and I would wish that at some point in this demo or beta we would have the ability to basically, you know, get into the actual late game here and see the full late game experience. Not every feature has to be unlocked on the demo, but at least like let me play a one run through, or at least longer than the current 80 turns or whatever is the limit, to kind of see what is the game going to be like at the end game. But I'm pretty much sure that I'm going to be buying this game regardless. It's just going to be a lot about like how much is the end game going to be feeling like, and how much of the experience is going to be different by playing with a different faction, as the quests are still going to be relatively the same for each faction, at least in terms of the neutral quests are going to be the same for everybody. But yeah, there's a couple of small tweaks that it probably needs. And I think there's a lot of potential here, and I'm very excited to see how the game will be on the actual release.